Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
On today's program, great to have you here, folks. El Rushmo at 800-282-2882, and the email address is elrushmo@eibnet.us. Now, I want to tell you, I'm debating whether or not to start with this, or whether I should lead and build into this. Let me start with it. I want to give you a scenario. There are many possibilities here. There are many things that can happen, good and bad, and I want to put some of them on the table. Now, you know me, I'm Mr. Optimist. I'm Mr. Uplifted. I am Mr. Optimistic and so forth. I'm not interested in pessimism. However, I am the mayor of Realville. And as such, I accept reality, and I deal with it. I immerse myself in it. I don't try to pretend it isn't what it is. And there's some hard, cold realities that we face here as a result of this vote. Whichever way it goes, whatever happens, this event on Friday was huge. It was big. Don't listen to people who try to tell you, yeah, it's not that big a deal, Rush. I mean, Obamacare, healthcare in general is complicated, Rush. You can't just strip it aside and put it back together inside of 90 days, 60 days here like they were. Very, very complicated. Not that big a deal. Well, it is a big deal, but not really for Trump. All the polling data, the people that supported Trump are still full-fledged behind him. To the consternation and the shock of many in the drive-by media. Trump's voters are still as attached to him as they were. Trump's voters do not blame him for this. Trump's the new guy. The people that have been there all along appear to be the people that can't get anything done. But Trump was going to be the guy to go in there and change all of this, and didn't. So people are asking, did Paul Ryan play Donald Trump? Did Trump have a scam run against him that he didn't see? Is this what actually some people in Washington wanted to happen? And yes, this is exactly what some people in Washington and outside Washington wanted to happen. Let me give you a potential scenario here. All of this, by the way, I will back up with news stories which add weight to this. I'm not predicting this, by the way. Not yet. But I do want to alert you to the possibility. You've heard Kasich and you've heard Trump both allude to the fact that it's time now to reach out to the Democrats in the House, but more importantly, Democrats in the Senate. And because the Republicans simply can't get their act together. Trump tried, did everything he could, called them up there, had numerous meetings, went up to Capitol Hill, but there are too many factions. Too many factions. The Republicans themselves are not unified, and I'm Donald Trump, and I want to get things done. And if I want to get things done here, I'm going to have to use the Democrats. Trump's alluded to it. John Kasich alluded to it. And even this morning, Mr. Newt alluded to it. Mr. Newt said, you know, now Mr. Newt is a dyed-in-the-wool Washington tactician, politician, strategery maker, and all that. And Mr. Newt said on Fox News today that Trump should not do tax reform next. Instead, make a call to Schumer. Start working with the Democrats on the infrastructure bill. Because Trump needs a win. Trump needs a legislative victory, and the Democrats will happily work with him on the infrastructure bill. So this is the kind of pressure that's going to be attached or applied to the Republicans. That's what Trump is doing. I don't know if Newt's doing that or not, but clearly there's a lot of anger, and deservedly so, for the House Republicans, the leadership, and the various caucuses in there. But I think if Trump reaches out, I'm not predicting this, but I think it's a very likely, very possible scenario. And if it ever does become something I predict is going to happen, I'll let you know. But I think the Democrats are salivating at the opportunity to work with Trump. I think they're licking their chops. I think privately the Democrats can't believe the good fortune that has been dropped in their lap by what happened with this bill. Now, on the other side of it, had this bill passed, that was its own set of problems and challenges. It was not going to be a panacea either way. But let's deal with it as the bill failed first, because it did. So I can see the Democrats happily joining Trump to fix Obamacare. I can see the Democrats happily joining Trump to work with him on his $1 trillion infrastructure thing. I do not see the Democrats working with Trump to help him on tax reform unless the rich somehow get soaked in it. And I do not see the Democrats joining Trump and helping him on the border and on the wall. Trump is going to need Republicans for that and tax reform. Now, when you get to the Senate and Trump working with the Senate, let's say in the infrastructure bill, or maybe anything at this point, you say, but Rush, the Republicans own the Senate. Yeah, they do. But can you not see Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski and John McCain and Lindsey Graham, at minimum, joining with the Democrats and supporting Trump on, say, an infrastructure bill? Can you not see minimum 4 Republicans joining the Democrats to give them a majority on an infrastructure bill? Obviously, the Democrats will not help Trump on everything, but on some certain initiatives, they would. Now, where does this leave the House Republicans? Well, first, let's talk about something else. What would happen to this insane lunatic Democrat base if all of a sudden Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi start working with Trump? Remember, the Democrat base has lost its mind. The Democrat base is obsessed with resistance. The Democrat base, Trump is Hitler, Trump is incompetent, Trump is this, Trump's got to be destroyed. And over here we still have this story with the intelligence, Russia collusion, and the things the Democrats are trying to do there. And the Democrat base is fired up, and they want Trump impeached. They want Trump gone. They're doing books and movies about Trump assassinations. They just want Trump gone. What happens if Schumer and Pelosi decide to join forces with Trump on a couple of things that Republicans don't believe in? And I mean, when I say don't believe in, I mean in an ideological sense, like $1 trillion infrastructure program or any number of other things. Obamacare, repealing and replacing, expanding it, whatever it is. So that would be a problem that the Democrats would have, because they're not going to be able to see Trump as a good guy all of a sudden. I think Washington's Democrats don't see Trump in any way the way the base does. They have stoked it. The Democrat leadership in the House and Senate has clearly, and the media has stoked all this irrational hatred of Trump. But the Democrats themselves are not really there. Trump is somebody they have to deal with, and they'll happily portray him as out of his mind. They'll happily portray him as somebody that's got to go. But they do not actually think of him the way their base is. And they have created that. They're responsible for it. That would be a big problem for them if they decide to join forces with Trump. They would then have to explain to their base how they have won, how they have spun everything and they've turned Trump into one of them. Now, in all of this scenario, if any of this happens, what are we left with? We're left here with the Republicans over in the House. And I know what you're saying, Rush, it doesn't matter. If Trump gets together with the Democrats on infrastructure or anything else, that's only going to give them the Senate. The Republicans still own the House by a huge majority and can stop anything Trump and the Democrats do. Yeah. And what does that do? Here you have Trump. Imagine the media. Imagine the pictures. Here you have Trump and Schumer and the Democrats and whoever eagerly talking about fixing the roads and the bridges and the schools and all that. And Trump and the Democrats working together, say, on the VA to fix that or whatever. And over here, who is seen as stopping it? Who is seen in that scenario as opposing it? Well, who's always portrayed as stopping things? Who's always portrayed as opposing? Who is always portrayed as being against progress? And so there they sit, the Republicans in the House of Representatives. Trump can be portrayed by the Democrats as having grown, as having learned in office, that he's seen, even though he is a Republican and he tried, look what they did to him on health care, the Democrats will say. And the media, if they decide they want to throw in with Trump, it won't be hard to characterize this as Trump having grown massively, as Trump having really learned quickly how Washington really works. And over here, as the lone opponents, will be the Republicans and all of their caucuses in the House. None of this we would even be discussing if that bill had not been pulled for a vote on Friday. And this scenario is exactly why there is so much blame going around. It's why so many people are spending so much time trying to focus the blame on Ryan, on Trump, and I'm sure you've heard all of the theories. Ryan, Republicans don't know how to lead. They didn't even want to lead. They didn't even think they were going to win. They didn't want to be in this position. The Republicans are happier in second place, being the brakes on an operation. They're happy to oppose. They're happy to react, but they don't want the pressure of leading, and therefore they don't know how. Here they have all of these votes as a majority in the House. They even have a majority in the Senate. They can't get anything done. They don't want to get it done. Theory number two. Republicans in the House are no different than Democrats in Washington. They're all of the establishment. They all don't like Trump. They're all angry Trump won. And so the first order of business here is to sabotage Trump and make sure Trump doesn't accomplish anything. There's that theory. Then there's the theory that it's Trump's fault, that Trump didn't even know what's in the bill, that Trump didn't even take the time to learn it, that Trump didn't even try to sell the bill based on what it really is, that Trump tried to sell it by bringing people up and saying, I'm Donald Trump. I do the art of deals, and therefore you will support it. That Trump didn't know what was in it, that he dispatched his aides to go up there and get it, that all Trump wanted was a win. He didn't care what was in it. If anything in it was bad, fix it in phase 2, fix it in phase 3. But needed a win right off the bat. Dispatched his ace legislative team to go up to Capitol Hill and tell them what's for. And to tell them if they don't do what's right in the ultimatum, that Trump's going to really blame them and hold them responsible. There's all kinds of theories. Everybody's got their own theory as to who's to blame and who's responsible for this, because it is a big deal. The Republican Party wins the House. I should more properly maintains the House and grows their majority there. The Republican Party wins the Senate. The Democrats lose over 1,000 seats in elections since 2010. The Republicans win the White House with an outsider who claims he wants to go in and drain the swamp, and with all of this momentum and with all of this inertia, the first legislative effort falls flat on its face, and there's embarrassment everywhere. That's why everybody's trying to affix blame. That's why everybody's trying to say that everybody else, but not them, is responsible for this. Now, what are the upsides of all this? Well, the upsides of all this is the bill stunk. The bill was absolutely rotten. The bill was not the bill that was passed in 2015 and sent up to Obama that Obama vetoed. The Republicans got together, House and Senate, and they passed a repeal and replace bill. And this bill was designed for the campaign. It was designed to get Obama's veto, which it did. It was designed to illustrate what they were going to do if they were elected. And it had all the ingredients in it that were not in this bill. And so the question is, between 2015, early 2016, when Obama vetoed it, and now what happened? Why did they change the bill? And then who changed the bill? And no matter who you talk to, the answer to that question is the House leadership changed the bill. And by changing the bill, what did they do? They re-added. Let me tell you what was taken out of the bill in 2015. House and Senate voted on it, sent up to the White House. Obama vetoed it. All the Obama regulations that were taken out, this bill put back in. The subsidies, not all of them, but a vast majority of the subsidies in Obamacare were removed in the 2015 bill. They were put back in the bill that was voted down last Friday. And the Medicaid expansion. In the 2015 bill, it was removed. And in this bill, it was added back in. And what we got as a result of that was a continuation of Obamacare. The 2015 bill effectively removed much of Obamacare. The House leadership put that stuff back in. Now, did they do it because Trump said to do it? Did they do it because Trump wanted it? Did Trump even know? Did Trump not care who was responsible? We still can't get to the final answer. In addition to that, what also was taken out, well, it wasn't actually taken out in the 2015 bill, but what has now remained in the bill is that what that was voted down was fewer insurance companies, not more. There was no going to be any removal of the limit on selling insurance across state lines. So there are a whole lot of unanswered questions here. There's a lot of curiosity and a lot of suspicion about this. And during the course of the program today, I'm going to be trying to unpack all of this, as well as all kinds of other stuff. Did you see this Chelsea Clinton tweet? The one with Abe Lincoln? Did you see that? Folks, if you haven't heard about this, hang on. Last Friday night, here at Mar-a-Lago, at the Winter White House, the Republican Party of South Florida, whatever it is, annual Lincoln Day dinner. They created a program that you get if you go in. Like you get a program at a ball game. They had a little program with the agenda in it, who's speaking, who's saying what, how much to send to this person, how much. It's a fundraising thing, right? So, on the front of the program is an artist's drawing of Abraham Lincoln wearing a Make America Great cap, a red Make America Great cap on the head of Abraham Lincoln. It is a drawing. Chelsea Clinton saw it. She sent out a tweet. Please tell me this is photoshopped. Please. Meaning, it's likely that Chelsea Clinton literally actually believed that Abraham Lincoln had worn a Make America Great cap and had been photographed wearing it back in 1863. She was serious, folks. She was scared to death that Lincoln actually wore the hat. Tweet, actually from a journalist who was at the dinner at Mar-a-Lago on Friday night, Andrew Lofholm is how, or Lofholm, I'm not sure he pronounces his name. But he sent the tweet out that just had the cover of the dinner program. That's all it was, no opinion added to it. And Chelsea Clinton, please tell me this is photoshopped. Please. You just have to wonder. And her mom apparently was caught trying to scale the White House fence for a second time. A woman was arrested early Sunday morning after trying to scale a White House fence for a second time. This, when I saw the headlines, it had to be Hillary. Who else would want to go to this much trouble to get over the White House fence? And who thinks that she ought to be there? And I'm sure she saw that somebody made it over once. So if somebody could do it, why not her? They continue to try. Transgender passengers uneasy about TSA shift on pat-downs. This from the Washington Post. I always thought that transgenders wanted to be treated like everybody else. And now that TSA is going to treat them like everybody else, they are uneasy about it. Transportation Security Administration announced a recent shift toward a more aggressive and uniform policy on pat-downs at airport checkpoints. A transgender people had special reason to be wary. Transgender passengers have used social media to document humiliating and sometimes hostile experiences at airport checkpoints in recent years, given the apparent change on transgender policies already signaled by the Trump administration. Some LGBT advocates are worried. What are they talking about? How can these pat-downs be any different from anybody else's? Are only transgenders allowed to complain about being groped in ways that would normally get the groper arrested? I don't understand. You either like it or you don't. You want it or you don't. Okay, let's go back to health care for a minute, and I want to back up that potentially negative scenario. Because, folks, I'm going to tell you something. If this negative scenario, and again, I just want to remind you, I'm not predicting it, but you look down the road, you can see things. I understand the school of thought, which is trying to say, it's no big deal. It's not a big deal. I mean, healthcare is a complicated thing, and this really did chew off a big bite. It was really, really unlikely. And then the fact that there was going to have to be phase 2 and phase 3, it just, not a big deal. It is a big deal, and it's a big deal for a host of reasons. Donald Trump told his voters that they were going to be winning so much they were going to get tired of it. He said, you're going to be calling me, Mr. President, could you lose a couple here or there? We're winning so much, I'm getting tired of winning. Trump said, politicians are stupid, the leaders are stupid, they do dumb things, stupid things, need to get in there and do things right. Need to go in there and drain the swamp. People elected Trump because they expected this exact kind of thing to not happen. They expected that Trump was going to go in and shake these guys in Washington by the shoulder and say, you've got to stop doing these dumb things. We're going to take these things one at a time and we're going to fix them. Didn't happen here, if that's really what was intended. How deep do you want to go with this, folks? How deep do you want me to go in coming up with various theories? Try this. There is a theory here that the Machiavellian Steve Bannon wanted this to fail, and wanted it to fail to actually help Trump in two ways. A, you blame it on Ryan. Make sure everybody realizes that Paul Ryan, who's standing in Trump's way, create movement and inertia to get rid of Ryan, because Bannon doesn't like him anyway, according to news accounts and reports even before the election during the campaign. And so the loss here has a long game aspect to it. This bill never had a chance of passing. It never had a chance, goes the theory, because the bill was horrible. The bill was Obamacare. It left too much of Obamacare intact. It had to go down to defeat. There's another aspect. Not only do you blame Ryan, you get to blame the conservatives. You throw most of the blame on the Freedom Caucus, Mark Meadows and his gang, as the usual culprits. The conservatives are always the ones standing in the way. See? They're the ones that wouldn't move. They're the ones that denied the new president. They're the ones that stood in the way of Trump winning. They're the ones. Trump is not ideological. And there is a war on conservatives in Washington every day. There has been a war on conservatives every day for the last 50 years. So it just depends on how deeply you want to take this. But I'd rather try to stay focused on the reality of this. And the reality is the bill failed. Now, you can juice that up by getting into the theories of why, who's to blame. Could Trump have stopped this? I mean, the people over at Vox, let me find this one little passage here to explain how the people at Vox were reporting this. They basically said that here you have Donald Trump, a president who doesn't even know what's in the bill, had no idea what was in it, here it is. Donald Trump promised to be a different kind of... Now, Vox is a millennial left-wing news outfit. And their game is that they don't report the news, they explain it. That's how they allow their opinion to be inserted into the news. And so Ezra Klein, who used to be the Washington Post, now says Donald Trump promised to be a different kind of president. He was a populist fighting on behalf of the forgotten man, taking on the Republican establishment, draining the Washington swamp, protecting Medicaid from cuts, vowing to cover everybody with health care and make the government pay for it. He was a pragmatic businessman who was going to make Washington work for you, the little guy, not the ideologues and the special interests. Instead, Trump has become a pitchman for Paul Ryan and his agenda. He spent the past week fighting for a health care bill he didn't campaign on, didn't draft, doesn't understand, doesn't like to talk about, and can't defend. Rather than forcing the Republican establishment to come around to his principles, he's come around to theirs with disastrous results. So this is intended as a theory of how Ryan played Trump. Now, this is not the health care bill Trump campaigned on, by the way. And the specifics of this bill. The bill that Trump campaigned on, if there is such a thing, is the one that was passed in 2015 and sent up to Obama, who vetoed it. That's what was. This is an entirely different beast. They threw things back in this bill from 2015. The House leadership did. Trump did not write this, there's no question, but he did praise Paul Ryan to the hilt, and he joined right with Paul Ryan on this thing. When he was selling the bill, he was not selling the bill. When he had these congressmen up to the White House, he was not getting into the bill and telling them what was good about the bill and why they needed to support it. He was selling it on the basis that he wanted it, that the party needed it. We need this win. It was almost a win-one for the Gipper kind of thing. The Republicans, with all their different factions, said, the heck with that. The bill's bad. The conservative caucus didn't like it in any way, shape, manner, or form. The Tuesday group didn't like it because it was too conservative. The conservatives didn't like it. It's too moderate. And the one thing missing in it was Trump. He was trying to unify all these people with the power of personality and power of persuasion. And so now the gaming and the scheming begins. Here's where I think the Democrats are, folks. I think the Democrats are feeling their oats like they can't believe. The psychological graph here, you go to election night, they think they're going to win in a landslide. Then they don't. And it's the bottom has fallen out. And they can't believe it. It is hell on earth. I mean, it's one thing to lose when you expect to lose. You prepare yourself for it. It's another thing to lose when you lose by a landslide that you thought you were going to win in a landslide. So they had to scramble the decks. They had to reorient and redo everything. And they had to go from a massive, upbeat, optimistic, we're going to finally take over America and make it a socialist empire, had to go to that, nothing but total resistance, realizing they didn't have the numbers to stop anything on top of having lost 1,000 seats. Now where are they? The first attempt to get rid of their baby, national health care, Obamacare, blows up. And it blows up not because of anything they did. It blows up because their opponents don't know how to win. I'm thinking the Democrats have to be feeling their oats right now, don't you? I'm thinking the Democrats are on cloud nine. I wouldn't be surprised if they filibuster Gorsuch. They just announced they're going to delay the committee vote on Gorsuch for a week. I wouldn't be surprised if the Democrats today are thinking they can stop everything now, that Trump is not going to get anything, that they can stop his tax reform, they can stop the infrastructure, they can stop anything they want, or they can choose to join Trump on whatever he wants. In the process, they can join Trump on whatever is appealing to them and do further damage to the Republicans, left out in the cold as nothing more than the illustration of who the real opposition is in Washington. They can't believe their good luck here. I'm guaranteeing you. So they're now plotting how to capitalize on all this. Now, where are the opportunities here for Trump and the Republicans? Well, they're always there. There's any number of things that can be done here. And we'll get into them as the program unfolds. We also have the Ted Koppel. You know, it's amazing. I have to tell you, oh, look at the clock. It was late March, mid-February, I got the first call at Ted Koppel. is doing a piece on modern media for CBS Sunday morning news program. And Koppel wants to come down here and interview me, 45-minute interview. And I said, no. Instinctively, right off the bat, said no. I have a backstory, little history with Mr. Koppel. And I said, there's nothing. Nope, just didn't do it. I was tried. My people, quote unquote, tried to talk me to, it's Ted Koppel. How could you? It's CBS. Have you people learned nothing in 30 years? It's exactly why not to do it. So I didn't do it. So I don't need it. Why do I want to go on a program that's going to portray my success as the problem in American media? Why do I want to do that? Why would I? You need to argue with him. You need to set him straight. It's not going to happen. It doesn't work that way. I've learned over the years it doesn't work that way. But Ted Koppel, he used to really like you. He used to be on Nightline. Used to is the operative phrase. Exactly right. So Koppel did it. I knew he was going to do it. He invited Hannity, and Hannity did it. You've probably seen the stories now where Koppel and Hannity are going at it, and Koppel tells Hannity he thinks he's the problem with the media and with the country. And so it's exactly what I thought it was going to be. Exactly why I didn't want to do it. And so we've got sound bites in this coming up, and maybe if you care, some of the little backstory regarding my numerous appearances on my first appearance on Nightline was to oppose Al Gore on climate change, global warming, environmentalism back then. And I remember, I was so excited. I did it. And actually, I was very proud of it. I was very happy. Rare time in TV. I thought I did okay. And that night and the next day, all the think tanks and the environmental scientists just blew up. Why they have some neophyte talk radio guy on instead of one of us? I mean, it wasn't even a contest. Al Gore versus... They were just mad they hadn't been asked to go on. And I'm sure I was asked to go on because I was not a scientist up against Al Gore, but held my own and I frankly nuked him. And so I kept getting invited back. I got to take a break here, folks. I just saw the clock. We will be back. Pittsburgh, Virginia. Great to have you here. You're first. Hi.
Hey, Rush. Thank you. Just curious to get your opinion on a possible theory I have. What if Trump's behind all of this in regards to the failed health care bill?
Yeah.
He is not an idiot. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's surrounded himself with smart people.
Yes.
Mike Pence knows how the system works.
Yes, he does.
Remember a few weeks or a few months back, out of the blue, Trump made some comment about, well, you know what? Maybe we should just let the bill fail and let the Democrats eat it.
That's not just once. There's a number of times that Trump said, and I believe he meant it. I'll tell you exactly what it is. You have a memory that rivals mine. He said the political thing to do, the smart political thing to do would be let this thing implode, let it bomb out. It's a Democrats' bill. It's got Obamacare as its name. Let it just implode because it's spiraling out of control and they get the blame for it. And he said, but we couldn't do that. We couldn't. It'd be irresponsible. Too many great Americans would be hurt. We can't do it. But the smart political thing would be to let that happen.
Exactly. And, a couple other thoughts, too. I don't know. I don't know if he would want to get rid of Ryan, but if he would, this would certainly be a good way to make that happen.
I hear that Bannon, Trump might want to get rid of Ryan, the Speaker of the House. The House has to do that. I mean, if Trump can't convince them to vote for the bill, I doubt that Trump can convince them to get rid of Ryan. I'm just waiting for all of these Democrat intel investigate. Wouldn't it be great if Trump was actually using the Russians to help sabotage the health care bill? The Russians have experience here in socialized medicine. They love it. Big national socialized medicine. They've been there. The Russians have been there, done that. They know that. They're screaming at me on the other side.
Well,
Trump works with Russians to sabotage health care bill, blames Ryan.
All I know is I have total faith in Trump. He is so many steps ahead of everybody.
All right. I appreciate the call. I'm running out of time, but I'm going to use that last comment because I've got polling data. Actually, two different things. The Selena Zito piece, but she's right. Trump's voters are nowhere near abandoning him, folks. Trump's voters are not going to blame him for this, no matter how much the Washington establishment wants that to be the case. In fact, I'd even go so far as to say that approval rating polls taken of Trump are irrelevant. Selena Zito thinks so because they don't even reach the actual Trump voter. We have more on that and lots more coming up right after. So it was back in February I think early to mid-February, and I got a call from the PR people here at the EIB network. And they said, Ted Koppel called, and he really wants to come down here and interview you for half hour, 45 minutes on a feature that he's putting together for the CBS Sunday show, the Sunday morning, not Face the Nation, with their early morning news show. And I said, what more can you tell me? Well, it's about the divide in the media today, and he thinks you're a key element there. And my instinct, nope. I said, nope, not going to do it. Right off the bat, just said, nope, not gonna. That's my instinctive reaction to every interview request I get from anybody in the so-called mainstream media. And so the PR people, thinking it would be good PR for me to do it, said, well, come on, man, why don't you do it? It's CBS. I said, that's another reason not to do it. It's Ted Koppel, for crying out nightlight. Well, I know, but I've got a backstory there. Believe me, this cannot end up being anything good. Come on, you got to do it. It was unusual. They very rarely try to talk me into things. So what I think happened was, I think either Koppel personally called him or somebody high-ranking in the producer network at CBS and made a personal appeal. And they tried 2 more times. A couple days go by. You sure on the Koppel? Yes, I'm sure. And another couple of days. Are you sure on the Koppel? Yes, I don't want to do it. You haven't been thinking about it at all? Only that I'm glad I said I'm not going to do it. You haven't been thinking about doing it? You haven't even gotten close? Maybe nope. Every day goes by. I'm glad that I followed my instincts on this. So they said, okay. And that's the last I heard of it until yesterday when the feature ran. Now, don't anybody misunderstand me here. They got Sean Hannity. They went and talked to Hannity, and they interviewed him for 45 minutes. And I don't mean to sound like anything here. I'm just telling you what happened is easily predictable. They interviewed Sean for 45 minutes, and they used 2 minutes of it. And now Sean's demanding that they play the whole tape. The premise of the program was not the divide. That's another thing I've learned. The producers never tell you the truth about what the show's about. They get close. Well, I shouldn't say never. I mean, some of them do. I don't want to paint with a big, broad Abraham Lincoln-style brush here. But for the most part, it's deception. For us, I'm sure they don't deceive Hillary Clinton or Podesta when they call and want him on. But with us, it's always degrees of deception or whatever, because they're not dumb. I mean, they know our instincts are not to do this. Now, some will do anything to be on TV and get a Fox News gig, so there's some people who do anything no matter what. Usually the younger they are and the newer in the business, the more agreeable they are to this kind of stuff. But, of course, I myself, El Rushmo, been around the block. So it wasn't about the divide in the media. What it was how conservative media is bad for America. Conservative media has destroyed the news. Conservative media is the reason that people don't trust the media anymore. And the theory is, and folks, this is key to understanding these people. Ted Koppel, and I think you'll hear it in one of the sound bites we have coming, Koppel told Hannity that the reason we are the problem is that we have made our audiences, as in you, far more responsive to ideology than facts. Now, what does that mean? It means that you listen here, not because what I'm going to tell you is the truth or not. You listen here because you're conservative and I'm conservative, and that's odd. To them, conservatism is odd. To them, liberalism is not an ideology. This is fundamental. You may think, of course it is. Not to them, folks. Liberalism is just the way things are. Liberalism is au naturel. Liberalism just is. It's like the air just is. Conservatism is the odd, kooky, weird offset thing. And therefore you in this audience and other like Fox News, you're not watching for facts. You wouldn't know facts if you saw them. You wouldn't know facts if you heard them. You're listening, watching because you want to hear conservatism preached to you. And Koppel says that this has been a giant setback for what they do in the mainstream media, which is tell you the truth, which is give you the facts. And the real problem, therefore, is now ideology is more important than facts, and since the drive-by media does facts, they are in a world of hurt, and therefore we are bad for America. And I'm telling you, they believe that. Liberals do not think specifically that what they believe is an ideology. In other words, they don't think that it's an intellectual pursuit that takes education and knowledge to understand it and explain. It's just what you're born thinking, doing, believing. And if you have it, you're natural. If you don't, and you're a conservative, then you need to be in a zoo. Because you're a wild animal and you pose great threats to everybody else. And they are beside them. What this piece is really all about is a piece that's been done over and over again. They lost their monopoly starting in 1988 with this program, and then what built on it in all the subsequent years. They've lost their monopoly. They can't explain it other than to say, you have been duped. Just like every election they lose, it's not because of them. It isn't because of their policies. It's not because of the damage that they cause. It's because you're a mind-numbed robot who have been tricked, lied to, persuaded, or otherwise encouraged to abandon what's good for you. What it really means is that they just don't know how to compete. And they are now competing, and they have even abandoned their pretense of doing the news and being objective. So let's go to the audio soundbites, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Now, in this piece, and I didn't see it, by the way. I didn't know it was on until it was over. I didn't know about it till last night when Cookie sent me an email about it with a preview of some of the soundbites that are coming up here. And she said, Rush, they did it again. They blame all this on you. You weren't there, but you were the focus. You're the guy that started all this. It's your fault. So, Koppel talks to Norman Ornstein, the American Enterprise, I think it's AEI, is that where he is? And he's way out there. He's just another far-left liberal that has no understanding of patience for, tolerance for conservatism. And he talked to Dean Baquet, the editor of the New York Times, and Hannity. And we pick up a segment of the segment itself with this bite.
They live in two separate worlds, and they don't understand Trump's.
Rush Limbaugh had a lot to do with creating those two separate worlds, but he couldn't have done it until 1987, when the Federal Communications Commission did away with the so-called Fairness Doctrine.
The Fairness Doctrine basically said that people on radio and television, if they presented one political point of view, had to balance it with the opposite political point of view.
Welcome to the Rush Limbaugh program, a program exclusively designed for rich conservatives and right-minded Republicans and those who want to be either or both.
Free of the Fairness Doctrine, Rush Limbaugh and conservative talk radio exploded into a political force of nature.
All of a sudden, we live in a world where people can get information and believe it's absolutely true and not have to get any kind of opposing point of view. And once they believe it, they will always believe it, even if it's utterly false.
It's surreal to listen to these people. It is literally, it's alternative universe surreal. That's Norman Ornstein. All of a sudden, we live in a world where people can get information and believe it's absolutely true and not have to get any kind of opposing point of view. Mr. Ornstein, you know what you people really need to do is listen to this. I saw that New York Times did a story. Did you see this? New York Times assigned 2 people to actually watch Fox News for 18 hours, and they did a story on it. It was like they'd been dispatched to Mars to report on what Martian life is. So they jetted to Mars 18 hours. They actually had to watch 18, and they reported on it like they were introducing people to a foreign language. It's the most amazing thing. They don't listen here. I would say, Mr. Ornstein, I do. You talk about opposing points of views. I present a clearer and better picture of liberalism than you or any other liberal does, because I'm honest about what you people believe. Both sides are all over every issue on this program. I give them. In explaining why my side is right, I have to explain what you believe and why it's wrong, and I do, and that's why people listen. It's informative, it's educational, it's entertaining, and it's unique. You people don't ever explain any alternative view, say, to Obama, because you don't think there are any. And the people that hold them are not worth your time. But we do more opposing views now. I don't have liberals on the phone because they can't last 30 seconds without starting to call me names. And it descends into chaos. I mean, we're open to them. If liberals want to be on the program, they can be on any day of the week. In fact, we still put them at the front of the line when they call. But you realize how many times in 30 years has this story been done? 100, 150, 200, 1,000 times? And always at the root of it is the fairness doctrine. Yes, you see, without the government intervening, Rush Limbaugh would never have been able to do what he did. Let me explain the fairness doctrine to you, because most people, it doesn't exist anyway. The Lebs would love to have it back, but it's not going to happen. People confuse fairness doctrine with equal time provisions, and that's not what the fairness doctrine is. The fairness doctrine has nothing to do about equal. It sought to penalize radio stations in certain ways, but no proscription on the balance has ever been part of any federal law. For example, 3 hours of this program on the radio station you're listening to is me. This station can or could have complied with the fairness doctrine by doing 15 minutes of an opposing point of view 5 hours later. That's it. The fairness doctrine didn't stop anybody from doing anything. The fairness, well, it did, because the government regulates broadcasters. The government grants licenses, and broadcasters have to go through ascertainment every 5 or 10 years to get their licenses renewed, and that's when they have to show they're fully serving the community, and that's where they have to show their programming, how they're balancing this and balancing that, which everybody was. You had to do it to get your license renewed. It did not mean that for 3 hours after me, there had to be a liberal. You could have had a liberal on for 1 hour at midnight, and the fairness doctrine would have been complied with. Anyway, Reagan tore it up, got rid of it. It wasn't a big... I was doing this program for 3 years before the fairness doctrine was gotten away with, or done away with. The fairness doctrine didn't stop me, and the fairness doctrine did not unleash me. This program stands on its own. The fact that the fairness doctrine was eliminated in 87, the liberals love to explain that because it can't be my talent. It can't be the quality of the program. It can't be anything substantive to explain all of this now conservative alternative media. It has to be the conservatives got rid of a key government regulation. Sir, we are eliminating the fairness doctrine so as to spawn a new conservative... That's not how it happened. The fairness doctrine is one of the greatest false gods, if you will, straw men that you have ever seen constructed. As I say, I was doing this exact program for 3 years in Sacramento, California. And in fact, only one time in those 3 years was equal time demanded. And you know how we did it? It was some preacher who got mad at something I said, who wanted to tell the virtues of life in Senegal, in Africa, as a retort to something I had said. The guy was a professional harasser of radio stations. So the management came to me, we've got Dr. So-and-so, and he said, well, I said, bring him in. Bring him on. If he's complaining, we'll get an interview him for a half hour. You will? Hell yes. We'll promote it for a week. We'll own the town. Bring the guy in. So we brought the guy in, and he shows up in full Senegal dress. Looked like Obama, in fact, in some previous pictures of Obama in Kenya. The guy shows up and he starts talking about what he likes about Senegal as opposed to Atlanta, and whatever else his point was. And I interviewed him, and he walked out of there. It was 30 minutes, satisfied. He got to be on the radio, and he got to run around, tell everybody that he stood up to Rush Limbaugh. And that was it. It was not the fairness doctrine that demanded that, by the way. It was the management of the station coming to me. This guy's a professional harasser, and they were afraid I was going to not want this. I said, bring him in. It did not lead to other people wanting the same opportunity. Anyway, all of this is a straw dog. They're upset that they lost their monopoly. They haven't gotten over it for 30 years. I'll tell you one thing I now realize. I thought, ladies and gentlemen, I'm in my 30th anniversary coming up August 1st. And I figure I have 20 more years doing this. So I figured at some point in the next 20 years, I would be given a lifetime award by a national broadcasting concern or a Hall of Fame. You know, like Howard Cosell got his. But I now know that's not happening. I don't think I will ever be awarded for anything. I'm being facetious here. I never have thought. I was surprised I've been admitted into 2 Hall of Fames, and it had to happen before they realized what they had done. I'm sorry, Halls of Fame, not Hall of Fames. It's like sons-in-law or brothers is not brother-in-laws. Anyway, minor error. I corrected it because I know. But there aren't going to be any of these Lifetime Achievement Awards. There's not going to be any recognition for because the people that are in charge of those awards resent the heck out of what's happened here. And Ted Koppel is just the latest. Plus, I have a little bit of a history with Mr. Koppel, who I guess I do. I really liked it. It was one of the most unfortunate things in my career that happened. It was a huge disappointment. I'll be back here in just a sec, because I don't want to have to try to compress that into a too short period of time. Bob in San Diego, great to have you. How are you doing, sir? Hello.
Great, Rush. Quick comments about health care versus taxes. I'm a physician in my 60s at a children's hospital, and I can tell you many average Americans, maybe not your listeners, but average Americans do not understand that their deductibles are $8,000 or $9,000. And since they don't get sick, except for maybe once every 8 or 9 years, they have no idea how disastrous Obamacare is, so they're not aware of it. But taxes are a different breed. I had 2 texts from, I would suspect, my colleagues who are now in practice, and they said, I just got back from our accountant, and we need to know more about tax shelters. We're getting killed. And I suspect they were Hillary voters, and they're really good folks. And it would be, in my mind, we're at the end of March. Tax season is coming up, the 15th of April. A lot of people get extensions into May and June, July. It would be insane to pass up taxes and push them into August or September. Now is a perfect time, and liberals, these young people will know they're getting money back. The
right.
Democrats in the House can't fight that.
Look, here's the problem. The problem is that everybody, Trump, Ryan, everybody on the Republican side said they can't do tax reform until Obamacare is improved. They can't do it. Let me expand on this as well when we come back. I think a lot is known about Obamacare. I think that's why it so consistently polls with people opposed to it. I think people know how much it's cost, particularly the people that have entered the exchanges, but I think everybody does. I mean, there's not a person in the world in this country who is not aware of the oppressive, out of any scope of normalcy, costs and prices associated with it. There's not anybody not aware of it. And a lot of people now have come to realize that with 2 things, with premiums so high and deductibles so high, you effectively don't have coverage. If your deductible is so high you never use it, then I would maintain to you that you actually do not have a policy. You're paying for one, or you're being subsidized for one, you're paying through the nose for one of these plans, and your premiums are up. You know, I was talking to a guy's premium, family of four, 1999. And this was in the heat. We just finished Hillary Care and defeating that, and the healthcare system was as it was without any intervention on the part of Clinton and Hillary and so forth. And back then, people were screaming bloody murder over the costs. And it was only getting worse as we got into the 21st century. And in 1999, a guy could insure his family of four for $195 a month with a $1,500 deductible. And people were complaining about that. Today, that deductible is as high as $5,000 to $8,000. And in most cases, people aren't going to use it outside of catastrophic. And if the deductible is so high that you can't use the policy, then you effectively don't have insurance if you can't use it because you can't afford it. And that's where we are now. It's absurd and it's ridiculous. A lot more people than our caller realizes think so. Now I'll get back to the tax question in just a second. Let me play a couple more sound bites here from Ted Koppel and Hannity before getting into the backstory. This is the sound bite that everybody's heard associated with the story. This is where Hannity and Koppel go back and forth about Koppel blaming Hannity and conservative media for the divide in America. Hannity said, "Do you think we're bad for America?" By the way, reminding you, 1995, Time magazine cover story, a picture of me that was photoshopped. It had a churlish grin. I remember the picture. I posed for it. They monkeyed around with my mouth, made it look churlish, and they drew some smoke coming out of it as though I was smoking a cigar, big fat evil cigar. And that it was not a flattering picture. It was dark. It was heavily shadowed. Is Rush Limbaugh bad for America? 1995. So 88, so 7 years I'd been doing it. And the following week, Time magazine's cover story was about Fidel Castro and his marvelous efforts to create an island paradise in Cuba. The Lion in Winter or something. It was just puke-worthy. So Hannity says, you think we're bad for America? You think I'm bad for America?
Yeah. You know why?
That's sad.
You have attracted people who are determined that ideology is more important than facts.
So in Koppel's world, liberalism is nothing but what is. And whatever they say is factual and true. And there's no such thing as bias. And there's no lack of objectivity because it's just what is. It's as natural as air and water. And it's conservatism that is a deviation from the norm. Conservatism is sick. Conservatism is abnormal. Conservatism is what needs to be stamped out. Conservatism is perverted. Conservatism is perverse. Conservatism is dangerous. And therefore, you people listen here not because you learn anything and not because you're given facts and truth. You listen here because all you want to hear is raw conservatism. It's the most short. See, Ted Koppel is not a dumb guy. But these people on the left have such closed minds. They live in their little cocoons. They are made nervous when anything outside their cocoon tries to get in. They shut it out. They ridicule it. I've never seen a more collectively scared bunch of people when confronted with things that they don't already instinctively believe. Many of them cannot even explain why they believe what they believe. They resort to telling you how they feel, but they can't tell you why they think anything. It's all about feelings. But we have destroyed the media because we have made facts irrelevant. And yet these people are the architects of fake news. The numbers of fake news stories on Donald Trump alone could fill an encyclopedia. Skip soundbite 3. This is the aforementioned soundbite number 4. This was February 4th, 1992. It's my first time on Nightline. My mom and dad were watching. My dad couldn't believe it. I didn't go to college. I had no business being on this TV. He couldn't understand it. He literally couldn't. came from the Great Depression, came from World War II. If you didn't have a college degree, you weren't going to get meaningful employment. That was such a formative experience. Well, he was proud, don't misunderstand. He couldn't believe it. Just defied the odds. And my mother told me that when the show was over, he looked at her, flabbergasted, and said, Millie, where the hell did he learn all that? And she told me that she said to him, from you, silly. It was a classic gut-wrenching, heart-rendering moment when she told me the story. And this is just a short little segment of it, but it's February 4th, 1992, and they're discussing climate change, global warming, and Al Gore has just come out as the big proponent. And he's going to be running for vice president, along with Clinton. He hadn't been nominated yet, this before all that, and the environment has become his gateway issue. And he was a unquestioned expert on it, even though he wasn't a scientist either. Remember, after this episode, I had so many so-called conservative scientific people just whining and moaning that Koppel had chosen me, and saying Koppel chose me specifically so that the side we believe in would lose. Because all I had was a guy on the radio. I wasn't a scientist. I couldn't refute anything Gore said. The bite is this. Koppel says, Rush Limbaugh, and note the question is how they do things. Rush Limbaugh, we've both run into politicians during our careers who know how to fake it on an issue. I don't know of anyone on Capitol Hill who is more knowledgeable on the subject of the environment than Al Gore. You have to take seriously what he says. See? You have to. He's the foremost expert on Capitol Hill. Who says? You have to take seriously what he says. Question is designed to get me, it's designed to get me to acknowledge the expertise of Al Gore, which I didn't do.
The environmental movement, as fueled by the militants who lead it, I think is the new home of socialism. I think it is, they've adopted a constituency here which can't speak, that is trees and rocks and so forth, and can't reject the so-called help and concern that the advocates are giving it. And it gives them a stage from which to constantly launch attacks at capitalism.
So I didn't accede to the premise there that Al Gore is the world's foremost authority. But that's not the backstory. Ted Koppel, I never met him. Offered to take him to dinner once. He said, that'd be great if you're ever in Washington, but it never worked out. But he liked having me on. I think it's like a museum piece. And like look what we found here. Look what there was at this time in 1992. There was no other media conservative spokesman. The show had started in '88, and outside of Mr. Buckley, but at National Review, and he had his own TV show. He didn't need to mess with it. And he did Nightline now and then. So I was on a bunch of times, and they were live. It was always at 11:30. And one night I'm watching Nightline. I'm not on it. And Barney Frank is. And Barney Frank quotes me as saying something that I didn't say that was really despicable. I don't remember what it was, but it was really despicable. It was filthy. It was just awful. And Koppel didn't correct it. And I actually got a call from him the next day apologizing, saying that he knew I hadn't said it, that it was somebody else, whoever it was. But the moment had passed and he didn't get a chance to mention it. But he asked me, please do not mention this call on the air. This apology is just from me to you. I said silently to myself, what good does that do me? As far as the Nightline audience is concerned, I said it. They're not going to apologize or retract it or say somebody else said it. So I kind of fumed about it, and some days and weeks went by, and something else happened elsewhere in the media that had me fulminating about how they do things. So I told this story, and I got a call from Mr. Koppel. I asked you not to mention this. and you did. And I am very disappointed. And that was the last I heard from him. This has been 25 years. Until this February, when they called and wanted me to be on this show that aired yesterday. And I always, by the way, there was not one contentious moment. The time, all those times I was on Nightline, it was always respectful. One of the most fun was a town hall meeting after I think the Clintons had been elected. It was a town hall meeting, and everybody was in Iowa except me. I was on the set of my TV studio in New York. And it was Carville and Geneva Overholzer, who was working at Des Moines Register at the time, and there was about 10 of them on that panel. And it was one of these extra special Nightlines, an hour and a half expanded look into some such thing. I forget what it was, but it involved the Clintons and their lying and prevarications and so forth. Oh, and one of the guests was Floyd Abrams, the noted First Amendment lawyer, a guy who made a legal career out of the free speech clause of the First Amendment. And the first thing he said when it was his turn to speak, I really object to Mr. Limbaugh being on this program, a person who would actually suggest that he'd got a Wall Street rumor that Vince Foster's body was buried in a cave in Russia, or whatever that rumor was. And it was fun. The whole show was fun. They were all just reacting to what I had said, because I was the only 10 people, the only one who thought what I thought. And I gave evidence of the Clintons lying. Oh, and I remember pointing out how Hillary had sat there underneath the pretty in pink. That's what the pretty in pink press. That's why I call pretty in pink press conference and so forth. And Carville got all defensive. Anyway, I was never treated unfairly or any such way on Nightline. It's just that one episode led to ongoing silence, just because I had notified everybody that Ted Koppel had called and apologized for that Barney Frank slip-up. Anyway, I didn't mean to take so long with that story, but it just reminded me of other adjunctive things. But we're finished now, so we'll take a brief break. We'll come back and resume right after this. They're talking about this whole report that Koppel did on Sunday, and it's Ainsley Earhart, Pete Hegseth, and Brian Kilmeade reacting to it.
They looked at Rush Limbaugh as the enemy. Rush Limbaugh came out organically, a guy who making $18,000 a year as a salesperson. The country loved him. He became unbelievably successful. That's an American success story.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, it just shows you how mainstream media thinks. If they don't agree with your opinions, they're going to sell you as being bad for America.
That's right.
That's right. So I appreciate that, Brian Kilmeade and the gang there. I just want to give him a shout out. Now back to the phones. Robert, Jersey City, New Jersey. Great to have you, sir. How are you doing?
Great, sir. I've been listening since October of 1990, driving on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And my thought today is that I feel like the tax is going to be a harder thing to get done, but it's going to be more doable than the health care. Because I think the health care was kind of like giving somebody a driver on the Island Green at TPC and telling them to make a bogey. But I think that the tax deal is something that, like playing 9 holes and shooting a 27 or a 28, it can be done. But I think that it will involve more.
Can I look? I don't want to. I'm not thinking about what you. I'm getting a little tired, just a little tired, because we've heard it for I don't know how many years, how hard it is to do things in Washington. It's really hard, you know. Everything's hard. Who gets away with not doing it because it's hard? Show me the success stories of people who didn't do it because it was hard, who are considered great achievers. You can't show me. There isn't anybody in that group of people. It's too hard, does not have people in it who ever achieved greatness. And I understand it's complex. Healthcare is very complicated, and the government's had its tentacles woven deeply into this whole charade for over 50 years. But I don't understand why it's this hard that you can't do anything. It's the same thing. Well, Rush, once an entitlement's been put into law, Rush, you can't take it away. Yes, you can. It's just you can't have elected people do it thinking they'll get reelected if they do it. But you can do it. No, Rush. You get people used to being given things all their lives and take it away. Don't take it away overnight, but for crying out loud, we talk about all this stuff that needs to happen to reorient the direction of the country and the government. And everybody talks a great game, gets all jazzed and all excited about it. And then when the rubber meets the road, it's too hard. Or we can't unify, or we can't do this. I'm telling you, the answer to this is there aren't enough people who really want to do anything about it. Because if you have the desire, if you really had people with a burning desire to lower taxes, it would be done. We know the Democrats don't want to do it. We know it's going to be a battle. But the Democrats are losing elections. And you damned wouldn't know that if you follow what happens in Washington. They've lost 1,000 seats in the last 8 or so years, and it looks like they're winning every day. It doesn't add up. It doesn't make any sense. Jeff Sessions just had a press conference in Washington, D.C. about sanctuary cities. And I'm looking for a story here with polling data on sanctuary cities. It is that most people are fed up with them and want something done about them. While I find that, let's go to the sound bites themselves. Jeff Sessions, we have 2 bites from I guess this is at the White House, actually, where it's not so much a press conference. Sessions, I guess during the media briefing, announced action against sanctuary cities.
The president has rightly said disregard for law must end. In his executive order, he stated that it is the policy of the executive branch to ensure that states and cities comply with all federal laws, including all immigration laws. Today, I'm urging states and local jurisdictions to comply with these federal laws, including 8 U.S.C. Section 1373. Moreover, the Department of Justice will require that jurisdictions seeking or applying for Department of Justice grants to certify compliance with 1373 as a condition of receiving those awards.
So Trump is continuing on the things that he can do via executive orders, which in many cases are just undoing things Obama did. He is continuing to do. The story that I was looking for, I found it's a Rasmussen poll. Only 35% of Americans said they would like to live in a community that declared itself a sanctuary city. And I think, folks, this again points to the divide that exists in the country and that the drive-by media, people like Ted Koppel, are very much concerned about. But the divide is not what they think it is. The divide is over the obscure, well, not obscure, the odd, strange, contradictory policies they want to enforce on people versus traditional Americans who want no part of it. For example, if you listen or watch the mainstream media, you see them celebrating sanctuary cities. You see them promoting them. You see them criticizing any effort to force sanctuary city governments to obey the law. Anytime the Trump administration or anybody, a member of Congress, suggests that what happens in sanctuary cities is illegal, whenever an illegal immigrant engages in a series of crimes, if they've been deported once, twice, 3 times, gotten back into the country, continue to wreak havoc, such as commit rape or run drugs or what have you, there seems to be no interest in stopping it. And anytime such people are found and discovered, the apprehension and prosecution of them is criticized because they're minorities and they're victims, and we've got to give them a fair chance because it's the United States that has made these people this way by denying them fair entry into the country, and we've served to make them mad and so forth. Even when they commit murder, such as in San Francisco, it is excused, and we are told that if we are repulsed by this and angered by it, that we are bigoted and short-sighted. And the picture is created that most of America, and the media is really good at this, making it look like all of the country is of the same opinion they are. I can give you countless examples of this. In Indiana, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. The media reacted to that like it was the worst thing that ever happened. They started attacking Mike Pence, and they went out and they found a pizza owner who said, a little 22-year-old woman said she would not serve and cater a gay wedding reception. It took them, 3 days to shop and find this one pizzeria in a small town in Indiana. They portrayed it as the whole state. But their coverage made it look like all of America was outraged, that all of America wanted to go in and put this little pizza shop out of business. And it turns out they are not the majority. They're not the majority of thinking. They're not the majority of thought. They are in Hollywood. They are in New York and the East and West Coast and certain enclaves. And it's evidenced here. Only 35% of Americans want to live in sanctuary cities. Working class Americans are least likely to favor living in a sanctuary city, only 25% supporting the idea. Wealthy Americans are the most likely to support living in a sanctuary city. Why do you think that is? And by the way, that number is 41%. That's not even a majority. 41% stated support for sanctuary because they can stay away from it all. The wealthy need not ever see it. The wealthy will never encounter it. But working class Americans will encounter it because they are the ones against whom crimes are committed. They are the ones in whose neighborhoods all of this garbage happens. And yet the media does its best to make it look like it's a totally mainstream idea. Sanctuary cities, this is good dissent. This is courageous dissent against an imperialistic government which is bigoted and racist against people of color who happen to not be from this country and so forth. And this is why, folks, even with this health care thing that happened on Friday, New York Magazine, no less, regretful Trump voters are mostly a myth. Ordinary voters pay very little attention to the goings-on in Washington, says New York Magazine. And for all of Trump's radical proposals, he's yet to actually do much of anything that immediately hurts the average Republican voter. Meanwhile, the growing economy that he, of course, inherited from Obama, which he did no such thing, is chugging along nicely, providing relatively low unemployment, decent wage gains, and so as far as most people are concerned, everything that Trump's doing is great. It's fine. And the health care bill, that's Congress's fault. The point of this is that you can't yet find, the reason we haven't seen the stories on regretful Trump voters is they don't exist. I think the New York Times or Washington Post, maybe CBS, did a story. They found one in Ohio. They ballyhooed it, made a big deal out of it. But Trump voters are not yet regretful. They don't see Trump deviating at all from what he stated he was going to do. And this sanctuary city crackdown, they're applauding this. This is exactly the kind of thing that the Democrat Party endorses that used to be members of their base. White working class voters used to be the Democrat Party base. They have been abandoned. Democrat Party has decided to create this coalition of minority groups and aggrieved people who have these grievances because they're victims, and that's who the Democrat Party has championed. And these white working class voters are the people who literally are the victims of liberal policies and liberal of irresponsible government, victims of that. And to them, Trump is right on schedule. To them, Trump is doing everything he said he was going to do. Here's one more Jeff Sessions bite.
I strongly urge our nation's states and cities and counties to consider carefully the harm they are doing to their citizens by refusing to enforce our immigration laws and to rethink these policies. Such policies make their cities and states less safe. Public safety as well as national security are at stake and put them at risk of losing federal dollars. The American people want and deserve a lawful system of immigration that keeps us safe and one that serves the national interest. This expectation is reasonable, just, and our government has the duty to meet it, and we will meet it.
So they're on schedule, and they are heading on down the path exactly as they said they were going to. Sanctuary cities will not stand. If people engage in it, are going to be penalized. They're going to be held accountable to the law. One little paragraph here from this New York Magazine story on the myth that there are Trump voters who regret it. Penn State political scientists Eric Plutzer, Michael Berkman summarized their findings in another place, a Washington Post column. To wit, while his governance has galvanized opposition groups and his overall approval level remains low by historical standards, Trump's electoral base is not only intact, but it's enthusiastic and it's energized, providing Trump with a significant base of power. Those who fail to recognize this may find themselves underestimating his capabilities in governance in the same way that many underestimated his candidacy. Now, this story, I think, went to press before the health care debacle. It did. It's March 22, so it would have gone to press before the health care debacle last Friday. But the premise still holds. And it goes back to something that I have been reminding people of, that all Trump has are the people that voted for him as a support group. He doesn't have the media. He doesn't have, a community of think tanks and other intellectuals. Everybody in that group, people, is a never-Trumper or an anti-Trumper or ambivalent. But Trump's base is all he's got, and they are still with him. And it goes to this, even the approval number polls. Just like the presidential preference polls, the election polling that came out, it is theorized by many, including the great writer Selena Zito, recently in the New York Post, that Trump approval rating polls are irrelevant because as far as Trump's base is concerned, it's near 100% approval. But the pollsters are not finding those people. They are white working class workers, people, in cities all over America, but they are not found by pollsters. And so the approval and disapproval numbers that Trump is getting, that are being reported on, are probably not based in much reality, just like the pre-election polls were not. Because despite everything, Trump remains what he's always been, an outsider who is completely not just underestimated, but misunderstood by all of those in Washington who are still trying to find a way to plug him into their system. And that's never going to work out. They're never going to understand him if that's how they approach it. Since he can't get anything done with Republicans, if you missed it, I may recap it. It's not something I'm predicting yet. It's a likely scenario. It's possible that it could happen on a few issues. The point is, Sean Spicer at the press briefing was just asked about it, and he said Trump, the president, is very serious about working with Democrats, if that's what it's going to take. Now, stop and think of that for a second here, folks. Who are we talking about? We're talking about the people that are trying to criminalize Donald Trump. We're talking about the people that are trying to impeach him. We're talking about people who are trying, via innuendo and leak and media assassination, we're dealing with people that are trying to destroy Donald Trump, and his press secretary just signaled that they are serious about reaching out to these people to try to get certain things done legislatively, like infrastructure or tax reform. I can't see the Democrats working with Trump on tax reform unless the rich get soaked. I can't. The thing about this that should be worrisome is that if this alliance happens, if they're not bluffing, if they're serious, and if my scenario gets close, it's not going to be the Democrats adopting Trump's agenda. It's going to be the other way around, depending on what all Trump can do with the art of the deal and persuasion to bring him around. Here's Jane in Oakton, Virginia. I'm glad you waited. It's great to have you on the program. How are you?
Oh, Rush, I'm fine. Thank you so much for taking my call.
You bet.
It is such an honor. I can only say I've been listening to you for 25 years, And one year during Lent, I tried to give up listening to you for Lent, and it didn't work out too good for me. So I am so thrilled to talk to you. I've only known you to be wrong one time, Rush, and in all these years, and that was about Hillary and running for the Senate. But when you mentioned earlier that you thought that the Democrats would reach if Trump reaches out to them like he suggested he was going to, and the Democrats, you suggested that they might work with him. I don't see any way that they would ever do anything at all to try to facilitate Donald Trump's agenda in any way.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, right now I just listened to you, and I guess you didn't say that, but earlier today I did think that you had said that. I thought.
No, I did say that. I did not say that the Democrats would help Trump with his agenda. I said they might work with him, but it'll only be to advance theirs, not his.
Well, okay. See, okay. Well, only one time have I ever known you to be wrong. I misheard you. I thought that you suggested that they might work with him.
No, but you know what? In your favor, I can understand the way I explained it. I can understand how you might have thought that I meant that Trump would turn to the Democrats with his agenda and seek some assistance. I can totally understand how you got that impression. My point all along was that Trump's been telegraphing it. I've got. Here's from Reuters. White House looks past conservatives on tax reform to Democrats, and so forth, and some other things. Even the Obamacare repeal and replace. Nobody wants what's currently in place to remain, so there's going to have to be something done on it at some point. But my point, the danger in this is twofold. It's not just that the president gives up on the Republicans, but if he goes to the Democrats, it's not going to be because they cave and help him advance his agenda. They can't. Their base would abandon him. This lunatic fringe base would switch from assassinating Trump to assassinating Schumer and Pelosi. Can't have that. But the bottom line of it, if any of that happens, forget which. If any of that happens, guess who's left alone over there as the obstructors? That'd be the Republicans in the House. I mean, I can see how this could be set up if that were what somebody wanted to happen. It's a real possibility. But I didn't mean they're going to help him with his agenda, please.
Right. I think that they will oppose him. Anything that Trump has agreed with the conservative movement with, I think that they will obviously they will do anything at all to undermine and to thwart that.
Well, okay, true. Granted, but tell me where the conservatism is in a $1 trillion infrastructure bill.
Oh gosh, yeah.
You don't think Chuck Schumer would be chomping at the bit to get his fingers in on that? President calls and says, "Hey, Chuck, I got $1 trillion I want to allocate to roads and bridges. Can I get your help?" And Schumer would say, "My God, you picked the issue right out of our back pocket. Of course we'll help you accomplish what we have always wanted, infrastructure reform." And that there's nothing conservative about that. A government growing by $1 trillion.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, I'm sorry. The whole thing went out for a second. I thought that I had lost you.
Oh no! You will never lose me, Jane.
Oh,
no matter what
right.
happens to your phone connection, I will always be here.
Rush Limbaugh, I will love you till the day I die.
And it's both ways. I guarantee. Jane, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I can see how I was thinking about how I portrayed this likely or possible scenario. Point I wanted to make when I thought I did, maybe I didn't lead early enough with it, is that should this cross-pollination happen, folks, it's so easy to see after this debacle on Friday. Republicans can't get anything done. Trump's still not through his first 100 days, wants to get things done. If the Republicans can't find a way, where's he going to go? It's easy to see how he would join the Democrats for a host of reasons, not the least of which would be teaching the Republicans a lesson or what have you. But that's the great, there's more than one great danger in it. real problem with it is not going to be Trump's agenda that the Democrats help or assist with, or he's not going to get it. It's going to have to be something that they can say they've always wanted to be part of anyway, like infrastructure at Hillsdale College. They have been preparing to exceed your expectations, much as I do, with the release of a new online course presented to you free of charge. Remember now, Hillsdale College is in the business of educating people, and they love it. They get a thrill out of teaching people things that they don't know. And better yet, correcting things that people think they know, which are incorrect. They love it. They love it so much they give it away. They have online courses that are taught on campus, provided free of charge to anybody who wants to sign up and take them, on demand, on the internet. Several years ago, they started to do this. They wanted to expand the Hillsdale footprint, the educational footprint, way beyond the campus in Michigan. Now, the new course that they have created traces the nation's history, pays attention to the biggest debates over our freedoms through the course of time. This course, unlike anything Hillsdale has ever taken on, and they promise a fascinating conversation presented over 10 lectures this spring. They've titled this particular course American Heritage. It debuts this week with a lecture delivered by the college's president, Larry Arnn. Now, if you're thinking that you don't have time to take the full course, so there's no sense in signing up, then just try the first lecture. Remember, folks, there's no obligation here of any kind. There's no cost. There are no hidden things that are going to happen. For example, you're not going to be deluged with fundraising email from anybody. You're not going to be hit with requests for this or that. It's a genuine and legitimately free proposition here. And this course is American Heritage, and it deals with the biggest debates. You would think, what debate does there have to be with freedom? For crying out, why do you have to debate that? You know, this is one of the subjects and topics that I think is extremely valuable because it's something that everybody thinks is automatic. Freedom, we're Americans, we're free, we have liberty. What is there to debate about this? You'll be fascinated in this course to learn who, what, when, where, why, people who wanted to deny it or who attempted to define it in ways that you certainly wouldn't agree with. Nothing is as simple as the definition of a word, because once you add people to it, attempting their own definition, their own application, you end up with mighty political battles over something that's seemingly as simple as freedom. This course will give you a history of the challenges to freedom, the people who defended it, and the strategies that they used. And if you don't want to, well, you're not committing anything because there's no money. But just take the first lecture. Just watch the first one with Dr. Arnn. You can decide after that how much time that you want to invest, because that's all you're investing, no money. Sign up at rushforhillsdale.com. Series is free. It's part of Hillsdale's mission to pursue the truth and to defend liberty and the Constitution. Website again, rushforhillsdale.com. Here's Jim in San Diego. You're next, Jim. I'm glad you called. How are you doing?
Hi, doing fine, Rush. I noticed in the Democrats and the liberals there who want to take you off the air and how terrible you are, they've certainly repudiated their earlier belief in the First Amendment, the freedom of speech and freedom of the press, and the idea that competition was the way to make sure the truth gets out.
Well, you know, the competition's a strange thing. They actually, I don't think in their business, want there to be any. And they've now been forced to compete by virtue of the existence of this new media dating back to 1988. I mean, that's the beauty of monopolies. You don't have to compete. Whatever you do is all people get, so you can do as much or as little as you want.
Right, Rush. I'm about 82 years of age, and I've been around since the 50s. and as an adult. And I remember when they used to say, when they were in the minority and had the unpopular view, how they would defend your right to believe, to speech, and to express your views, no matter how much they disagreed with it. They defend it to the death. Notice they've changed their tune.
Excellent point. They do want to police speech. And I think that's what this media shaming is really all about. But what it adds up to, I can't speak for them, but I sit here every day from noon to 3, 5 days a week, 15 hours a week, however many hours that is over almost 30 years now. Well, 28 and a half. I have never once been bothered that there's anybody else out there doing this. I have never wished that whoever else was out there wasn't. And I have never sought ways to make it impossible for them to do what they do. It never even crosses my mind. Not once. I mean, not even dreaming about it. I never even dream about, wouldn't it be great if there was nobody? It never happens. It's so unrealistic. It would be insane to think like that. But they do. They are obsessed with silencing anything they don't agree with. I mean, literally obsessed by it. And if they could, they would use the full force of government and the law. If they could, they would use jail. But they're truly bothered by it. The thing I don't get, in my case, going in a reverse trajectory here, I come here every day confident that what I believe is true, that what I believe is right. I'm confident that the backup I've assembled in terms of facts and details is accurate, because I know if it isn't, I can always correct it, either the next hour, the next half hour, the next day. As such, I'm not bothered at all that there's anybody else out there, even doing what I do the way they do it, even that their liberal talks, liberal media, liberal shows. It doesn't bother me. The notion of having to earn whatever share of the audience I get in this giant arena is something I've always accepted. That it's up to me to earn it. And there are a whole lot of things that you have to do to earn it. And after you earn it, it becomes even harder to keep it. But they obviously don't think this way. The Koppel report, they're obsessed with discrediting us or eliminating us. Why? It makes me believe that they're not confident that what they have or what they do can stand on its own. That the only way it can stand is if there isn't any opposition to it. Because if there's opposition, if there are people pointing out the flaws or the bias or the things that are wrong, then they've got problems. But I've never worried about this. Maybe it's a confidence thing. And maybe it's an understanding of how capitalism works. And maybe it's a lack of fear of competition. But it has never once occurred to me that the way to success and the route to power is shutting everybody else up. But man, every one of them look at it that way. And they make no bones about it. Time magazine in 1995, Ted Koppel yesterday, is Rush Limbaugh bad for America? The Washington Post, is there too much democracy going on? Bill Clinton calling KMOX in St. Louis on Air Force One, complaining that I have 3 hours every day and that there's no truth detector. There isn't. There's only the rest of the giant. In 1992, remember, this show was it. So he's complaining about one show versus all the rest of the media. Now let's get serious. One show versus all the rest of the media is not going to make a dent in what they do. It's the fact. Well, okay, let me put it this way. One show in the universe of all of theirs did not harm them in terms they still had the same number of voices. They still had the same number of newscasts. They still had every opportunity to reach people every day. It's just that I was added to the mix. Over time, their viewership, it has plummeted, and it's bifurcated, and it's been spread out and so forth. There's no question it has. But maybe they feared that when it all began. But it strikes me as paranoid and insecure to look at all of this the way they look at Fox News is the exact same way. The New York Times assigning 2 reporters to watch for the first time Fox News for 18 hours and report back to the editor what they found. The editor didn't even want to turn it on and watch it himself to find out, and it's just a cable channel. But he couldn't bear to do that. He had to assign a couple of minions to go through the torture of actually watching Fox News. Anyway, they pose a threat because they actively seek ways to silence people they don't agree with. And they have the audacity to say that Trump is Hitler. By the way, for all of you leftists out there, that Trump's Hitler, that Trump's an autocrat, that Trump's a tyrant, then how did the health care bill fail? If Trump's all of this horrible stuff, why didn't he just order it done? And if he didn't get the votes to shoot the people that didn't support it, why didn't he do the things that Hitler did? You have to reverse it to get to who's really who's really the authoritarians, who are the intolerant ones. Brief timeout, folks. We will be back. Well, Mr. Sturdley, when did you think you were an adult? Well, even before, when you were like 12, 15, at what age would you consider yourself an adult? And when that age occurred, did you think of yourself as an adult? 21. What about you, Brian? 21, 22. Well, according to the latest research on this, which has been compiled by CBS Chief Research Officer David Poltrack, as well as Nielsen Catalina Solutions, millennials consider themselves adults at age 30. But it gets even worse than that. In other words, still, what, you remember the story we had the other day about the reason these little snowflakes in college are the way they are is because in their minds they're still in daycare, and they have not grown up to the point that, they still want safe environments like they had in daycare, and that was all in an attempt here to persuade people daycare is not all it's made out to be. Not only do millennials not consider themselves adults until they are 30, the reason is it's not until they're 30 that they are completely responsible for themselves. They no longer reside with their parents and pay entirely their own bills. Doesn't happen until they're 30. Now, there are exceptions, obviously. I'm sure your millennial kid is totally self-sufficient, and it's everybody else's that are the dead weight. But this is just, it's aggregated research. And on the surface, it makes sense to me. It seems believable to me. When I was 15, I wanted to be 30. I tried to behave like an adult when I was 15. Yeah, I guess when I was 21, that's when you can legally buy things. That was part and part of it for me. But also 18. But 30, that would have been, if somebody told me that we're not going to consider you an adult until you're 30, I would have been so depressed I wouldn't have known what to do. Because adulthood was one of the things I desired most when I was a teenager. Hey, folks, this is a time of year when people contending with an IRS issue really face some pressure. Now, there's a small percentage of people who have gotten behind with the IRS for one reason or another, and the upcoming filing deadline just makes their problem worse. The deadline this year is Tuesday, April 18th, by the way. It's a couple of days later because of a holiday weekend. Now, some people are taking this date as a challenge to make things right. That's what the staff at Tax Defense Partners have advised them to do. They're the first people to tell you, if you haven't filed in a while, file. Filing a return, no matter what's on it, file a return. First thing to always do. Even if it requires additional conversations, if it requires additional tax owed, obey the law. File a return. Filing on time saves people from fines. For filing late, it saves a whole lot of potential bad penalties being assessed and all that. If you're in this boat, if you have any tax problem whatsoever, don't deal with it yourself, no matter how minor you think it is. Tax Defense Partners, 800-499-7777. Believe me, after you call them, a load is going to be lifted like you can't believe if you have any kind of a tax hang-up. 800-499-7777, Tax Defense Partners.